Hello, welcome to Verbling. I'm teacher Oakley. For the next hour here on Verbling, we are going to continue our little mini series this week at this particular time slot on Verbling, looking at the TOEFL speaking test. Earlier this week, we looked at the scoring and discuss some tips and the general general concepts behind taking the test. Yesterday we looked at questions 1 and 2. Tomorrow we'll look at questions 5 and 6. Today we'll look at specifically questions 3 and 4. These are considered to be integrated questions as opposed to the first two questions, which are independent. You simply respond to a question, speaking, obviously. In questions 3 and 4, actually, you're required to do a short reading, a quick passage, plenty of time to do the reading. Then you will listen to about a minute or a minute and a half. In question 3, this will be dialogue, two people talking. In question 4, this will be a lecture, one professor, for example. In these questions, you have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to speak. Now, okay, for this type of question, you are allowed to make notes, and this is, in my opinion, this is the most important factor, really, of two important factors. The second being that you really should know the template of exactly what you're going to say, the organization of how you're going to present the material. And you can basically memorize that template and use it. Today in this class, we're basically, so that we can look at it more critically, in more detail, and talk about these elements. We're actually going to look at the reading, and then we'll look carefully at a dialogue, at a transcript, so we can kind of analyze it a little closer and talk about how to answer better. Okay, again, today's class, integrated questions. There is reading and there is listening. The main point, the main idea is to know what you're going to do before you take the exam, and also to make good notes, especially focusing on capturing the main points. If you don't get everything, that's okay, but you've got to get those main points. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. So, hello, Rebecca. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Pretty good, I guess, I suppose.
Good.
Good, thanks. Okay, we're gonna kind of, jump into this and try an exercise. Have you try it, and then we'll kind of examine your response, and then try another one. We'll try a couple question 3, and then a couple question 4. So I'm going to do a screen share and just talk about it just a little bit more. The idea of question 3 is it's responding to a dialogue, responding to a conversation. The idea is you're going to summarize an opinion. The two people having a conversation, you're summarizing, or basically using reported speech to summarize the other speaker's opinion, not your own opinion. You're not required to give your own opinion. Okay. While reading the passage, you most likely won't need to take notes. Well, that's true, because the reading passage actually remains on the screen. Again, the TOEFL test is a TOEFL IBT is a computerized test, so you can actually still see the reading. So there's really no need to take notes. However, in the listening portion, you're only going to hear it once, and that's it. You're not going to repeat anything. And mostly, what you're talking about in this question is what you hear in the listening. The reading passage, maybe you might include one sentence or even a half a sentence to give background material. The reading is really not very important when it comes to your answer. Okay, very important to understand the speaker's opinion. One of them, one of two things is going to happen. The reading material, one of the speakers will either strongly agree with the reading material, or one of the speakers will strongly disagree with the reading material. And it should be very obvious. They will use expressions and pretty extreme intonation to make that fairly obvious in the actual, when you listen. Okay, so let's look at an example. The reading would be something of this nature. One quick paragraph. You have something ridiculous like 45 seconds to do the reading, which is way more than enough time. Pay attention. This part is actually, okay, you'll hear in a narrator. Here's one other point. Pay attention to the narrator. The narrator will give you valuable clues, possibly vocabulary, language that you can use. People tend to ignore the narrator, but you really shouldn't. So, for example, you'll hear the narrator. Read the following announcement from the university president. Well, actually, knowing what kind of written material is very valuable, because your first sentence, you might say, okay, you might use the idea it's an announcement from the university president. So there you go. That's just an example.
But who is the university president?
Well, we don't care. It's irrelevant. But
okay.
no, the reading is sometimes it's an article in the newspaper. Sometimes it's an announcement like this. Sometimes it can be different types of written material. So knowing how to reference it when you're speaking, because you will reference the reading, it's helpful. Okay, well, here it is. Here's the reading section. Rebecca, can you go ahead and read this for me, please?
Yes. Due to recent budget constraints, the university has decided to close the computer labs during weekends and reduce their opening hours during the week from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. These changes are necessary in order to compensate for an unexpected budget shortfall. Without these cutbacks, the school would be forced to reduce service in other important areas, such as the library and the cafeteria.
Okay, great job. Now, again, the reading passage is only used as a passing reference. Although there's a good deal of detail, specific hours and reasons for this action and other information, basically you need to think about this reading as think about a very basic summary. So, Rebecca, what is the announcement about? Real simple, basic summary.
The measures which have been taken, you know.
Well, okay. For example, I would say,
Due to the recent budget constraints.
okay. For example, I might use this in my actual speaking section. The university president has announced computer lab hours will be reduced.
Yeah, one of the
That's it.
measures.
That's it. Not using any extra detail, but a very short, to the point, economical, succinct statement what this is about. That's really all you have to say about the reading, and that's it. So basically, the first step of question 3 is some very basic reading comprehension and being able to summarize it in one sentence. Okay, but you have 45 seconds to be able to manage that. So you have time to think about that. All right, tick, tick, tick. The clock keeps ticking, and now it's the listening section. And you'll hear the narrator. Now listen to 2 students discuss the announcement. Okay, generally speaking, it's a man and a woman so that you can reference the man says, the woman says. That they make that part easy. Okay, Rebecca, you want to do this with me?
Okay.
All right, you're a woman, I'm a man. You do the woman part. I'll do the man part.
Okay. Do you hear the announcement? They are cutting back the computer lab hours.
Yeah, but it's better they cut down there than at the library or the cafeteria.
Maybe for you, but I don't have a computer. I use the computer lab a lot. Plus, I need to have access to a computer for my economics class.
Well, they're still open during the week.
I know, but I get most of my work doing during the weekend. The labs are usually empty then. They'll probably be filled with students now. It's going to make it really hard for me to get all my class work done.
I didn't really think of that. Okay, so and then the narrator comes back on and says something pretty close to this. What the narrator says is always very similar. The woman offers her opinion of the announcement. State what her opinion is and what reasons she gives for having that view. This is the important part. So this is what you must do to get a decent score. State her opinion and give the reasons she gives for having that view. Okay, again, you have 1 minute in this particular type of question. So this is a very short example. In reality, this was maybe whatever. What did it take us? 30 seconds? In the real test, it'll probably be more like a minute and a half, maybe 3 times as much material. In the real test, there will also be much more distractive material. They'll say other things about different elements not directly related to her opinion and the reasons, which is what you're focused on. So there's usually much more distraction. Okay, now even just looking at, browsing this transcript, Rebecca, what are her 2 points? And by the way, there's another big hint. Question 3, there's always 2 main arguments, either for the announcement or the reading or against the announcement. That's what you got to listen for, those two main reasons. Maybe if you can pick up a little detail so you can add detail to your answer, that's great. But mostly, that's the most important part. So what are her 2 points?
So the woman is not happy at all because they have cut the cut down the hours of the computer in the lab. The use of the computer in the lab during she needs more the computers because she doesn't have one. She needs more the computer over the weekend, which is when they cut down the access. And she's not happy for that because she needs the computer for her economic class. That is the reason why she is not happy about this decision.
Okay, very good. Now, when I'm making notes, all right, this is what I do. You can have a different method, and that's fine. But I kind of make myself an outline. Even maybe I start the outline when it's still the reading time. So reason 1, no computer, right?
Yes.
Okay. No PC, and maybe I'll R1, and then I'll D1 detail. What was maybe a detail about that? She needs for economics. All right, I might make my notes like this. No
Economics
PC
classes.
needs for her economics class. All right, and then maybe reason 2. Okay, weekends. Notice I'm just writing down keywords. I'm not going to
Yeah,
be
I
writing
know, I
down.
know. Also,
Yeah.
and also during the week, the the computer lab is full, is more busy.
Mm-hmm.
It's busier. The comparative is busier or more busy.
Yeah. Okay. So right,
Which
just write it down.
no, I'm asking
Busier.
you. I don't know.
Busier. Busier.
Busier.
Yeah. Okay. With single syllable adjectives or adjectives that end with a Y, regardless of how many syllables, we do not use more or less. We do not
I
use
know,
either of those. Yeah.
but some one of them are weird, so I'm not sure. This is one of them.
Okay.
Busy,
Busy ends
busier.
with a Y, so it's just busier. You don't say more busier. That's redundant, repetitive. Okay,
Okay.
so for example, in the verbaling chat box here, my notes are R1, no PC, D1, needs for economics, R2, weekends, D1, busier. That's it. That's all I really have time to write and focus on as I'm listening, just some keywords, making sure I capture the reasons. All right, let's compare what you did to a templated response. Okay, you did a pretty decent job, by the way, except for example, state opinion. All right, look at this here. The woman believes that the decision to reduce the hours of the computer lab is a bad idea. Okay, this is okay. There's a couple options here. You can just state the opinion. Notice it doesn't say anything about describe the announcement. All right, in this template, the test taker is doing exactly what they tell you to do. That's fine. I might, just so I can add a little detail, I would summarize the announcement and add the idea of very quickly that the woman disagrees. For example, I might say something slightly different strategy, but similar. I might say, the university president has announced that the computer lab hours will be reduced. The woman strongly disagrees with this decision. I might use 2 sentences to state her opinion, just to make it clear. It's really doing the same thing, though. Okay, now you did that, but you've got to get that out of the way in like 10 seconds. So
Yeah.
you kind of fumbled around trying to add a little bit more detail with this first
Okay.
sentence. Got to be really straightforward and attack it directly. All right, and then look at the template. It's very, very simple. Reason 1, detail. Reason 2, detail. Exactly as I have formatted my notes. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing. All right, that's it. You did a good job on this part. All right. It's really the same thing. When yesterday you give a reason and then detail, reason and detail. It's really the same
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Well, what is this example? Her first reason for claiming this is that she needs a computer for her classwork. The rest of the test, questions 3, 4, 5, 6, you are doing a lot of reported speech. So here's another extremely helpful hint for the TOEFL exam speaking. Cultivate or grow your vocabulary for words like
Cleaning.
the claim, the woman states that, the woman believes that, the woman says.
Claims. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So because rest of the
Consider. It could be another one.
considers, yes.
Consider.
Yeah, that's another good one. Okay. Notice also first reason, we're using transitionals to introduce, and then also for the second one, okay, you've got to be using these connectives for sure. Okay, the woman states she doesn't have a computer and that some of her classes require her to use one. All right. Well, there you go. Even better answer is that she claims that she needs one, needs a computer in order to do her economics course. All right, that's better, more specific detail. If you manage to capture that kind of thing in your notes, terrific, use it. If you don't, not a big deal. You can still get a good score. All right. Also, the woman claims it will be harder to complete all of her work. According to the woman, the best time to do the work is on the weekends. Now she fears that the labs will be too full during the week. Okay, many times this, all right, reason and detail could possibly be reversed. For example, if it were me answering this question, I would say also the woman states that she does most of her work on the weekends. She proclaims, there's another one, proclaims that because of the reduced hours, it will be far too crowded and busy on the weekend and she just won't be able to get her work done. Okay, I've kind of reversed the detail and reason. Sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you can. Yeah. Question 3 is pretty direct. There's going to be 2 reasons, like every time. In some of the later questions, especially the lecture questions, question 5 and question 4 and 6, there may be more than 2 points. There may be 3, 4, 5 points. When you hear those, like in the next question 5, you've got to get at least 2 of them. And then hopefully if you get 2, then 2 with some good detail. It is not necessary to get all 5 points. All right. Most people freak out about the listening. I didn't hear it. I didn't catch the information. It's not necessary to catch everything. It's really what I'm trying to say. Just get as much as you can, make good notes. Okay, that's it. As we see here, as you can see, you basically just report it. You repeat the reasons given by the speaker. That's it. You can even use the same words, vocabulary used by the speaker. If you know a synonym or synonym phrase, then that will definitely help your score. But really, you can even use the same vocabulary they use. All right, let's try one more. Question 3 here. All right, here we go. Read the following announcement from the president of the university again. Okay. I'll go ahead and read this one, Rebecca. You relax and try to concentrate on summarizing it really, really efficiently. Effective immediately, the university is instituting a new policy on off-campus visitors. Any guests are now required to register with campus security and obtain a guest pass, which must be worn at all times. This new policy is necessary in order to keep all the students safe and to increase campus safety's knowledge of who is on campus. All right.
Yes.
So you have a summary in your brain. All right. Let's look at the. Now listen to the following conversation. Okay. Here we go. Let's do this together. I think the university's new policy is great.
Really? I think it's going to be annoying. I have some friends visiting and they are going to have to spend all this time registering. And what if they lose their passes?
True, but that's a minor inconvenience. It's worth it if the campus is safer. Remember that vandalism that took place at the library was done by someone from off campus?
I still think the school is overreacting. One bad thing happens and they go and change the policy.
No, there have been other incidents. A couple of months ago, there were some things stolen from one of the dorms. and the students reported seeing a suspicious figure.
I guess you're right.
Okay, now look in this example, Rebecca. Who is the question going to be about? The man or the woman? Ah,
The men, maybe. What are, which ones are,
yeah.
bueno,
This, yeah, okay. And sometimes when I've done practices, I don't know. Sometimes they're disagreeing with each other. So you have to be particularly careful, and you might have to do 2 sets of problem detail
yes,
notes.
you told me yesterday, yes.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't know. Are they going to talk to the woman who disagrees with the announcement, or the man talk about the man who agrees with the announcement? Well, you do know usually I think I can't say every time, but usually the first one to proclaim their opinion, that's who the question's going to be about. So listen very carefully at the beginning. Maybe, for example, the woman might see, did you read the new announcement? She has not said her opinion yet. And the man says, yes, I think it's great. If he's the first one to say his opinion, you can pretty much count on that the question will be about him. And then because at the end the woman says, yeah, I guess you're right. She's conceding the point to the man, so you know it's going to be
Yeah.
about the man. And here it is. Indeed. The man gives his opinion on the announcement. State the man's opinion and provide the reasons he gives for holding it. The question is always going to be the same. There's no different instructions. It's give the opinion and reasons. So, okay, Rebecca, you want to try it out? If you want to take a few seconds, you can.
Yeah, but now, well, yeah, yeah. So the men's set is a is a great policy because the campus would be safer, thinking about the previous events, such as an incident happened months ago, and some students have been stolen too in the campus. So that would be a good thing in order to get everyone safer.
Okay. Hang on. Just a second. I made some notes.
It's still time.
Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was going to time you, but you jumped in before I started the timer, so I didn't. I think you were around the time, but okay. All right.
Okay, I don't
All
know
right.
the time. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about it in relation to a typical template. All right. State your opinion. You did that. However, one thing that was missing, you said the man thinks that it is a great policy. What is it? Okay. So this is why, personally, for me, I would always do a brief summary of the reading so I don't forget to, like you just did. This is why my choice, I would say, the university has just announced stricter code of conduct for visitors to the campus. Now
I didn't know what was the good policy, the great policy.
yeah,
Okay.
going back to the reading.
Because I thought that is the first part, the summarize of the summarizing, you know?
Well, the question only requires you to state his opinion. But on the other hand, you do have to explain in specifically and clearly what his opinion is about.
Yeah,
You
I got
see?
it.
Okay. So that's why my material here, my technique would be slightly different. I would actually do a 1-sentence summary of the reading. Not to mention that I actually have 45 seconds to do the reading, and this much reading takes me about 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. I have an extra 25 seconds, plenty of time to prepare a 1-sentence summary. Plenty of time. So why not? I know it's going to end up helping my score. And then it's very simple to say the man agrees with the announcement. That's easy. You don't have to think about that. Okay. Reason 1. Okay, what did you say? Oh, a little mistake here. You said, Rebecca, students have been stolen. Well, no, that would be kidnapping. If
No, some things have been stolen, yeah.
from students. Yes.
Okay.
Right, right,
Yes, yeah.
right. The students weren't stolen. That would be kidnapping. Different crime. Yeah. Right, right. So that was a little bit of an error. Okay, students have had some things stolen from people off campus. All right. Second reason, I forgot what you said. You used more of a general statement, which, by the way, if you get into trouble and you don't manage to capture a second point, then you can say something more general. Okay, people would be safer. All right. Right. His first point, okay, vandalism by someone from off campus.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I think taking notes would be helpful.
It's in my opinion essential. I could not do this.
Yeah.
I could not get a good score on this test without taking notes. And I'm a native
Okay.
speaker. There's
Yeah.
no way I could.
Yeah.
I would have
My
failed
memory
such.
is not good enough for this.
Yeah,
You
well,
know, so I would need to take notes.
mine neither. Yeah, yeah, mine neither. I could never do it without notes. All right. And second point, yeah, things stolen from the dorms. Detail a suspicious figure, maybe. Okay, which you got this one. You really didn't get the other one, but you made a more general point. Now you probably wouldn't get a perfect score. You could still get a pretty decent score, with what you said. Okay, well that's the idea. Again, in the real exam, this whatever 4 responses and replies. No, it's going to be more like 16. It's going to be 3 or 4 times as much dialogue going on. These are very simple examples here. So, and the thing is, the important information, there's no more important information in the real exam where there's 3 or 4 times as much information. It's just you have 3 or 4 times as much unimportant, totally useless detail and side information, pieces of side information and things like that. Distractors, really. So you got to focus on getting those main points. Okay. All right. A way to listen to that. Sometimes they will use, well, first of all, they will actually use transitionals and connectives to help them make their points that you're listening to. Also listen for their intonation, true, but that's a minor inconvenience. They'll use much higher pitches and much faster pitch changes before they express an idea. It's natural English. So you can kind of listen for these natural hints, especially coming up now in the lecture. All right, we're going to look at the lecture, the next question 4. So this one, in my opinion, is tough. Okay, let's talk about it. Now in this one, you really have to be listening for the pitch changes and for signal words and signal phrases. First of all, the first main point is things like that, because that's when the important information is coming. Listen for contrast when they say, however, on the other hand, or they will use signal phrases to introduce information that is not important. They'll say, you students all remember what we talked about yesterday, the breeding pattern of hyenas. This has nothing to do with the lecture and the information that you need, because he's talking about what happened yesterday. So it's distraction.
What question? However, on the other hand, okay, it's very
Yeah.
formal, I think. What
Yeah.
about if I say in the exam, anyway? Anyway is okay?
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about what you say as the test taker. I'm talking about what you listen to in
Okay,
question 4. It will be quite formal. It's a formal lecture. So he will use
okay.
those things like on the other hand and however. That's what I'm saying. You got to listen for those. They presage, they come before important information. They
Okay.
do. They signal that important information is coming. Okay. Again, reading and obviously listening to a lecture. Okay. Now, again, like in the last one with the conversation, either the person agrees or disagrees with the reading. It's the same thing. Either the you have to talk about how the lecture relates to the reading. Either he agrees and he's trying to strengthen the position of the reading, or he disagrees and he argues against it. Usually is what happens. Okay. Now, in this case, reading the passage, it's a little more important because it will help you recognize the main points. All right. You want to try to recognize the main points, because then the lecturer will be talking about those main points and they're easier to pick out what the lecturer is saying, whether he agrees or disagrees, whatever. Again, as I just mentioned, sometimes there's 3 to 5 of these. Now, really, you have to get at least 2. You have to. If you don't get all 5, for example, it's not the end of the world. But if you get 2 or 3, you should be okay. When listening, obviously take notes. For each of these characteristics or main points. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look. All right. Again, the narrator, and he will give you. Basically, he will give you a summary. He'll tell you what this is all about. So listen for that. Read the following passage about captive breeding. Okay. Rebecca, can you go ahead and read this? I've been talking
Yes.
too much. I'm tired.
Both environmentalists and animal rights activists consider captive breeding a solution to the threat of extinction of certain endangered species. In captive breeding, endangered animals are caught and bred, and the offspring is then released back into the wild. Unfortunately, the results of this program have been missed. In many cases, the animals that are released back into the wild are unable to survive. The time spent in human captivity makes it more difficult for them to acquire food and to fit in with other members of their species.
Okay.
Species.
Species. Yeah. Okay. A couple of words you struggled with a little bit.
Oh,
Extinction, threat of extinction,
threat.
endangered. It contains the word danger.
Endangered.
Yeah, pronounced the same way as danger. Endangered. Yeah. What else? Released. Released with a T sound at the end, back into the wild. I don't know. I guess that's it. Okay, so this is quite a bit more challenging, really. So again, you have quite a bit of time, like 45 seconds, to sort of analyze the reading. What do you think are the main points here, or the main characteristics of captive breeding?
Looking a solution for the threatening of extinction of certain species.
Right, which is captive breeding. Actually, in question 4, it's a little different. You have to think about it differently than question 3. Question 3, you just summarize it in one brief sentence. Different strategy. Question 4. And here, okay, the general idea is actually not important. The narrator gives the general idea. It's about captive breeding. Listen for information that says this is good, this is bad, or this is what we believe, or this is what we don't believe, because this will all right, this will kind of introduce or give you the idea of what the main points or characteristics will be like. For example, all this beginning part is just summary, intro, really, what is captive breeding. Doesn't really get to the important stuff until unfortunately, the results of the program have been mixed. So they're saying sometimes it works, sometimes not. Okay, they're unable to survive, difficulty to acquire food, fit in with other members. All right. So this is basically the points. Okay, it's not really working, and here's why. Okay, the why. Okay, here's the idea, the summary. Here's the why. 1, 2, 3 points. What you're looking for is those 1, 2, 3 points. You may not capture them all. That's okay. Again, you can still see the reading, so you can refer back to it later, like when you have your 30 seconds of preparation time. If there's something you missed, or you can pick it up in the listening. It's not the end of the world if you don't happen to catch it. All right, now the lecture. I'll do the lecture. The narrator will introduce it. It's always the same. Now listen to a professor lecture about the same topic. All right. Let me have some water. Okay. Okay, so we've been talking about some problems faced by biologists when they try to reintroduce species into the wild. As we've talked about, sometimes the animals aren't ready or able to fit into their native habitats. But there have been some new strategies used which seem to be working out. For example, biologists recently reintroduced 4 lynx. You guys know what a lynx is, right? Into the wild. The first time they tried it, the cats died of starvation. They didn't know how or where to hunt. This time, they kept the animals longer and let them mature. They also forced the animals to hunt for food instead of giving them food directly. And finally, they kept the lynx together in a big pen, so they know how to get along with other members of their species. Okay, couple notes. Notice how I read that. That's kind of how it sounds on the real test. There's and notice the distraction. You guys know what a lynx is, right? That has nothing to do with your answer. Okay, so it will be presented in a, I guess, supposedly natural way with distractions, and the professor will go off topic. Things like that will happen, and they're just meant to trick you, actually. So try to keep focused on the main points. And again, just like the reading really didn't get to the main points till halfway through, notice the lecture does the same thing. Okay, he introduces, and then he finally says, okay, I'm going to talk about an experiment with a lynx. It's not till this last small paragraph that he actually explains what the differences are. He actually doesn't even make his points. This happens. So don't fall asleep as you're listening. This happens quite a bit. They don't come to the point for a while, or they'll have an entire paragraph of irrelevant material. All right, so be prepared for that. Okay, now this question, unlike question 3, which is always exactly the same, this question can be slightly different. Here it is. The narrator will say, the professor describes the results of a captive breeding experiment. Explain how the results of the experiment relate to the reading on the topic. So you've got to be careful about understanding this. What are they asking you to do? Explain the results of the experiment. So you're really talking about the experiment and how they relate to what was said in the reading. Okay, so, the lecturer, in fact, he could be just giving his opinion. He could be giving an argumentative lecture. He could be disagreeing. He could be talking about an experiment which illustrates something. He could be giving an example. So this is a little trickier, altogether, because you don't quite know how the material is going to be presented to you. So it's going to be just a little bit different. All right, Rebecca. Well, all right, I'll leave this part of the lecture here. Believe me, this is the most important part. So I'll leave that here to help you. You want to try this question here. Explain how the results of the experiment relate to the reading.
Well, first of all, they left a link in a while, and the link wasn't able to feed itself. Secondly, they left another one, and he managed to um, to get food on his own. And thirdly, they left more links, and they were able to get the food on his own and live with its species.
Okay. Well, you're getting the points, but your answer there would probably be a 2. Okay, you're definitely relating to the topic, and you're captured some of the points, but your organization is way off. Remember, the question is asking you to relate to the reading. You really did not do that with your language. You just talked about the experiment. So you literally answered half the question. You'd literally get half the score. Out of a possible 4, you'd probably get a 2. Not that anything you said was that bad or your delivery was good. You used correct vocabulary, but you just didn't answer half the question.
Okay.
Okay. There's a couple ways to do this. You're basically doing reported speech, basically of an argument, 2 sides of an argument. And that's basically what they want to see. They want to see how you do that. So let's look at an example here.
Okay.
Okay. Main response. All right. The experiment with the link shows that captive breeding can be successful. Now, again, I myself would use almost the same, but slightly different strategy. I would use a topic sentence. I would say, the results of the experiments the doctor describes are quite different from the results given in the reading. So I would actually bring up the reading in the first sentence. My sentence is still very, very efficient, quick, fast. Again, I want to get done with that topic sentence in 5 to 10 seconds, 10 seconds maximum. And then I want to move on to the more important part, the part that's really, you have to do this topic sentence, which you kind of missed. You have to. in every question, 1 through 6, you have to give a clear, concise, separate topic sentence. That's required, but once you got it done, it's done. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. All right. Okay, look at the way, I'm going to give you another alternate pattern, but look at this pattern. Characteristic from the reading. One problem with captive reading, according to the reading, these kind this is important language, is that animals do not always survive when reintroduced into the wild. Now, your contrast. In this case, just using connective but the scientists were able to successfully reintroduce the lynx into the wild. Okay, so what we're really looking for in the scoring, they're looking for you to use what we were talking about earlier. On the other hand, however, but, okay, they want you to use that. That's a big part of the scoring on this question. All right, the reading states that a major problem is that animals don't know how to hunt. However, there it is, for the experiment, biologists first taught the animals how to hunt before releasing them. All right, another problem, again, using the signal phrases, transitionals. Another problem in the reading is that the animals don't know how to interact with other members of the species. Scientists were able to get around this. Oh, there's a nice construction. However, by keeping the links together in a group. Okay, now it really doesn't matter if you do lecture, reading, like this template, reading, lecture, reading, lecture, reading, lecture, doesn't matter. Or you go lecture, reading, lecture, reading, lecture, reading, the opposite. It really doesn't make any difference, honestly. What they want to hear is the comparative structures. The reading says this, however, the lecture said that.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
One thing, but on the other hand, the other one.
Yeah.
This, but, blah, blah.
However,
Okay.
okay, all that being said, it's actually easier when they disagree. It's actually a little more challenging when the reading and the lecturer agree. Then you've got to, cultivate vocabulary. The reading says this. The lecturer bolsters that opinion. Okay, the lecturer adds evidence. The lecturer illustrates that the reading is correct by talking about. You've got to use different language to talk about. He's supporting. The lecturer supports the reading by saying that blah blah blah. So you need different language. So you have to be prepared to either do a contrast or to report about how someone is supporting another idea. All right. So you got to. So these kind of vocabulary is very important. So again, you're obviously going to get a better score if you know he supports, he bolsters the opinion, he illustrates the opinion by, if you know 2, 3, 4, 5 ways to say it, much better than using the same word over and over and over again. Fairly obviously. Okay. I think we have time for maybe one more here. Okay, here's the, ooh, this is a tricky one. All right. All right, so you can concentrate it and even make notes, Rebecca. I'll go ahead and I'm going to read the reading and I'll do the lecture. All right, so, and then you can try the question. All right, here's the passage about methane. Methane is a colorless, odorless gas that occurs naturally as a result of the decomposition of plant and animal matters. Methane is a hydrocarbon like coal and oil, and it's all that remains of long dead plants, dinosaurs, and other prehistoric animals. Although methane can be produced by volcanic activity, scientists usually connect the presence of methane with the presence of biological life. Many microorganisms excrete methane as a waste product, and scientists often infer the presence of these creatures by measuring the amount of methane in the air. Okay, now the professor. So, there's been some interesting news for those of you who dream of life on other planets. It turns out that Mars has a pretty high concentration of methane in its atmosphere. Now, usually when we think of life, we associate it with oxygen, right? But that's because we're kind of prejudiced. A whole host of creatures need no oxygen whatsoever. The reason that this is important is that it looks like Mars has very little geological activity. Methane can be produced without life, but as far as we know, there are no active volcanoes on Mars. Plus, here's another interesting point. Methane only lasts about 300 years in the atmosphere. So that means the methane we're seeing now is fairly new and it's being replenished somehow. Okay. Again, the main question is going to be very different each and every time. So you really have to focus on it, make sure you understand it. So here it is. The professor presents some facts about Mars. Explain how these facts may indicate life. Uh-huh.
But I don't understand. The
Yeah.
professor presents some facts about Mars.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain how these facts may indicate life. I think it's the opposite. But
Okay, you got to remember the reading. Okay, this is a case where the professor agrees with everything in the reading passage, and then it uses the information he agrees with to talk about something else. All right.
he says
Okay.
that volcanoes could produce methane, but that doesn't indicate it could be there could be life.
Right. But he also says Mars has very little geological activity. That means volcanoes.
Yeah, but volcanoes aren't life.
Right. There are no volcanoes on Mars. So his point is, where is the methane coming from?
Okay.
Methane comes from two things:
Why does
life and
methane?
volcanoes. There you go. That's the crux of the argument and what you're going to talk about. Methane is produced by volcanoes and life. On Mars, there are no volcanoes.
So the
So,
other option is just life. Where is life? But where is that life? Okay.
well,
So the professor said there are, as we just said, there are two possibilities of getting methanos. Methanos can be produced by a geologic activity, and that is not the case in Mars because there's a little. And the other one is, on the other hand, he says methanol could be produced by life, so that could be a possibility.
okay. All right.
Methane. How is the pronunciation? Methane.
Yeah. I just, uh, yeah. Uh,
Methane.
Yeah. For example, okay, here's a clue for you. If you're going to make notes, you want to use some of these keywords, but you don't not sure about pronunciation. When the lecturer explains them, or if they're in the reading material and you work them out, you may want to write them down in your notes in like a phonetic style that you can understand, like methane,
Methane.
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 Okay, and geological. However you understand the phonetics so that you remember how to say it. You can just,
Geological.
there you go. So you can just
Geological.
glance down at your
Yes.
notes and just read the phonetic spelling. Okay, there's a little hint for you. Okay, we've only got seconds left, but all right. Look, this is how I might present this. Again, thinking about comparing it to the last template over here. Okay, I need a topic sentence, or I can even make two sentences. The reading explains how methane is either produced from volcanoes and geological uh, ways or as a byproduct of life.
Okay, yeah.
In the lecture, the professor explains how on Mars there's very little geological activity, and he states that there's no evidence of volcanoes on Mars, active volcanoes, which of course would obviously rule out geological activity. So it raises the question, if the methane is not coming from that source, where is it coming from if the only other known source is from biological life? He also adds one more point, that it takes 300 years for methane to break down in the atmosphere, thus raising the question, how is there still methane in the atmosphere of Mars if there's no volcanoes, if there are no volcanoes? Something like that is what I would say. Okay. So you can see it's quite different from the first one. You've got to be
Yeah.
kind of flexible. It's really difficult. Question 4 needs to be practiced a lot because there's a lot of different variations. Question 3 is very straightforward. Once you get it down and you know that template in your brain, you can just bam, bam, bam. It's easy. Piece of cake. But 4 is different every time, and there's 5 or 6 variations. So you need to practice it. Okay, I have gone over time. I got to go because I know that I have
Yeah.
another
Okay.
class.
Have a good
So
day. See you. Bye bye. Thank you.
thanks, Rebecca.